make potting soda.
Great news. Someone had a question about the job market. So we've got representatives from Spanish, French, and German sitting here. So maybe reflecting on what is the job market like in Texas or in the country for your language? And also if someone's not studying one of those languages, but rather a language, Russian, Chinese, Arabic, American Sign Language, do you have any idea about the market? Is it easy to get a job, a lot of competition? What would you say?
If you are studying Mandarin, we want you. We want you to come work for us. Right now, so I can speak very specifically about our area. So in our area, we have a couple different school districts, public school districts. So we have Lubbock ISD, we have Friendship, and we have Cooper. So Lubbock, Friendship, and Cooper all have Spanish and French bare minimum. Now, Lubbock ISD, because we have a couple of schools that are part of what's called the International Baccalaureate Program, which if you've never heard about that, give it a Google. It's a pretty cool thing. But we have an entire feeder pattern, so that's elementary all the way through high school, where they are IB schools. And what that means is that those elementary schools, the middle schools, and the high schools all have to offer multiple languages, and students are in languages for the entirety of their educational career, which is really fantastic. I know that when I started learning French in 8th grade, it was kind of terrifying because I felt like I was really bad at things. I was self-conscious. And so the earlier you start, the less self-conscious you are because you make mistakes all the time and you don't care. But we need people working in those schools. We have Mandarin at Ramirez, and then not at the middle school that those students go to. And then we have Mandarin again at Lubbock High. So we need people for Mandarin. We would love to have Russian. Personally, on my campus, or on our campus, our Latin teacher is pretty old. She's looking at retirement pretty soon. So we need someone to do Latin as well. And then also, if you are an ASL teacher and you can find a school that's looking for ASL, you have job security for life. It is so hard to find people who can teach these non-traditional languages and do it well, that you are a precious commodity if you can find a district that wants that program. So we want you.
Did you? I think I could speak about the Spanish part. If you don't know, Lubbock ISD, we have 2 elementaries that are dual language, which means the kids speak Spanish and English most of the day. My son did that, and he's in Hutch now, 8th grader, but he speaks Spanish. My daughter did it too. She got a 5 in the Spanish 4, for example, because the program is so complete when they're little kids. I mean, these kids walk in, they're kindergartners, they speak English, and they ask, hey, can I go to the bathroom? And we talk to them in Spanish. No. But for little kids, they're crying, right, because they don't know what you're saying. But by the time they're in 1st grade, they understand both languages. It's amazing. They do the same thing with Chinese now. They have a 3rd language added to this. They go to middle schools. Like my wife teaches at the middle school level, the dual language program. So you have all the Spanish speakers. They're taking like literature classes. They're taking the AP4 at 8th grade level, which means a college level class for 8th graders in Spanish. So we have ability to maneuver with Spanish bigger than Chinese because of the community that we have in Texas. But when I was here in the 80s, it was so hard to find anything Spanish. Today you can go anywhere in Lubbock and you see Spanish. You go to Walmart, they have both things in both languages. You have panaderia in every corner, you have bread stores everywhere. It's just around us, right? The Hispanic culture is growing, Spanish is around us. If you saw the Super Bowl, the halftime, it was dominant, and there's a lot of Spanish. So I think it's around in the culture. Latin America is huge. If you haven't traveled, all the people that speak Spanish. So I think Lubbock needs to have that. We had a meeting on Monday with all the world languages department and LISD, and one of the first things that we talked about is we're going to need a lot of Spanish teachers next year. They're doing all these changes in middle school, so we're going to need more Spanish teachers at the schools that we already have. So I think there is an opportunity to grow, to get into the system, to know areas either in Chinese or either in sign language, and you can really get into the learning of being a teacher. So.
doing online work with the K through 12 here, and then with Wayland as well, I'm in an interesting position too, because with K through 12, I didn't know this was a thing. But if you're in a school that doesn't offer the language, you can. There are different programs where you can study that online, and then it's contracted through a different school. So the Texas Tech K through 12 has 8 sections of German online, and then they take their exam at their high school and they mail it here. So just because my numbers might be whatever they are here, it doesn't mean that there's not students elsewhere. And she had said as well, with the IB program, it's interesting because the students have to take a foreign language. And then I was in New Mexico, another paid trip. And we got to go to, at the seminar, we looked up all the different languages that are offered. And there were languages, Gaelic is offered. And there's no Gaelic teacher, but they have to find someone who's certified in that area. So many languages are offered with different programs, and they have to have someone who can read it, speak it, grade it, and give instruction on it. So with the internet and online classes, being a foreign language teacher, you're not nailed down to where you're living anymore. You could live almost anywhere that you wanted to. He's got students as well, I believe, from where the people that you're in class with from everywhere. So with the internet, you're not stuck to where you geographically are anymore. So it's wonderful.
Awesome, thank you. So another question here. My professor always speaks in the target language, so whether that's Spanish, French, German, etc. My professor always speaks in the target language during class, but my teachers in high school didn't do that. I don't understand my professors. Why can't they speak more English? I think I would learn better if they did. What do you think?
I teach all the levels of Spanish, so if I spoke Spanish to my Spanish 1, it would be extremely hard for them to understand. I speak English, and sometimes it's hard for them to understand, but because it's just high school. But I think the bottom line is languages is like a sport. The more that you practice, the more that you actually continue to do it, the better you're going to be at it, right? You practice, you're able to do it. But if you have a summer where you just didn't go to the gym, it's so hard to get back to it, right? So I think speaking in the classroom in the target language is beneficial, but a lot of times just it does not get the teaching part that we want. So I think we have to modify that because the classroom is so diverse. You have kids who have specific needs, people that have specific things that you need to modify, accommodate for them, all the special ed. You have all the circumstances that are in the classroom. That a lot of times, as a student, you don't even know what the teacher is dealing with. But as a teacher, we have 36 kids, 35 kids, and they all have different special places to be. And in order to get things across, sometimes we have to do that. And I think college, you have a different speed, a different process, so you can do that differently.
So I mentioned before that I teach French in one of the classrooms in which I studied French in high school. And I can also tell you that language instruction across the country has changed so much in the over 10 years since I graduated from high school. I started French when I was in 8th grade, which meant that I was able to go all the way up to French 5. So French 5 AP in high school. And my capacity at that point, I was really good at conjugating. I did an awesome job of reading about, Charlemagne. I could do that really well out of our textbook. Unfortunately, if I were put on the spot and asked to say anything, I made mistakes all the time. So I was literate but functionally mute. I distinctly remember an Italian exchange student shaming me because I said something about a friend, and I said, she is smart, but I used the masculine smart and not the feminine. After 5 years. The way we teach has completely changed, which is great, because when I first got to Tech, I had a kind of similar experience. The second teacher, or the second instructor I had for my French classes was a terrifying man from the Democratic Republic of Congo, who not only had an accent different from what I was used to, but would not respond to us if we spoke in English, would only respond if we spoke in French. And that was terrifying. And so part of the problem is that in high school, not everyone has shifted over to the new style of teaching in which communication is the most important goal. Like, I don't care if my students misspell a word or if they conjugate with the wrong ending. Who cares? If you can understand, then we're moving. And that's the whole point. And if students feel like they're a failure all the time because you're picking on every tiny mistake they're making, no one's going to want to try, because we don't like feeling like failures. So like Mr. Palafox said, is we have to have the opportunity to practice. And if we're not practicing speaking and listening constantly, it gets a lot harder. And the only cure, unfortunately, this is something no one wants to hear, the only cure is dealing with it more. I once asked one of my teachers, could you speak more slowly? And she, also terrifying, said, could you listen more quickly? Well, actually, no. But can you say it again? Maybe I'll catch another word. And really, in terms of education, if you can perfectly understand more than 60% of whatever input you're getting, it's too easy. You need to be struggling through, because we only learn through struggle. That's a very Soviet thing to say, I know. But it's the struggle that makes it worthwhile. I wish I had a better answer for you.
I've got kind of the same thing as well. Communication is not only verbal as well. There are many different kinds, and like Mr. Palafox had mentioned, some students learn better visually. So you do have to have the balance and everything else like that. But until I was in a moment where it was kind of sink or swim, like I was terrified, I didn't understand what was going on, so I had to work harder to understand, and then it got very easy. That fear is something that it can be harmful at first, but as soon as you understand that's just how you're going to learn better. It was actually an incredible thing to have to go through. It was very, very beneficial that if I'm going to understand what's going on or how to do this, I just have to jump in and do it. And as soon as you can get over hearing your own voice in a foreign language, I always fear that I sound like Peggy Hill when I speak German, and I probably do, and I just have to get over that.
9.
Oh, thanks. But you just have to start doing it. You have to jump in and start doing it. And even if you're doing it wrong, that's fine, because as long as you can understand what's going on. I goes to the grocery store. I understand what you're saying. It's a little off, but you're trying, you're engaged. And they know what they're doing. They're at a university. They've got a PhD in the area, so they're a good teacher. They know what they're doing.
All right, thank you very much. We have a couple minutes for questions. We can stay here beyond 5 o'clock. So what questions do you have? I'll come up here so I can give you the mic. All right.
Hi, okay, I know your student, the one who went to Harvard. I was her Spanish tutor last year in the springtime. Really excited. But my question is, so all of you guys teach in high school. Did you consider teaching in higher education? I don't know if the people in the audience are aware or not, but depending on where you teach, a lot of times high school teachers make even more money than professors do at large universities such as this one. So, as an example, depending on the department and whatnot. So did you guys consider teaching in higher education? What do you think are the pros and cons between, K through 12 versus college and university?
Like I said, I already teach in some colleges as an adjunct, so I see the difference in the classroom. I think there's two different animals, two different types of teaching. I like both. I think the college experience is challenging in being able to make it relevant to them, especially because there's more connection with finances. They're paying for the class, so they have to be able to connect with the teacher better. But it's more personal, it's more relational. Public school becomes more of a connection with the system of education. In other words, when you teach in the classroom as a professor, you teach your curriculum, you follow your own ideas. Well, when you're in the public school, you have to follow more of the public school's values and system. So that's a big difference between those two. Definitely money is a difference too, and how you make money until you get to be a tenured professor, I'm assuming.